Welcome to the Amphibian Press podcast. I'm Sara Forrest, and with me today is C.L. Schneider. She's a fantasy and urban fantasy author, and really happy to get a chance to talk to you. So thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited.
All right, so you write both epic fantasy and urban fantasy, as I said before. And if you want to just tell us a little bit about your first series, which is Crown of Stones.
Yes, the Crown of Stones trilogy, that's kind of my baby. The Magic Price was actually the first one, my first published book. So that will always have, the special place in my heart. This trilogy is based on the story of Ian Troy, who is a man born with an addiction to magic, living in a world where magic is reviled and the users are enslaved. So it's very much a journey story. It starts with him being, this loner mercenary who's kind of cut himself off from the world because of things he's done, and he doesn't feel like he's, safe to be around. And then, through a series of events, he is forced back into society, and his addiction that he had gotten under control is now raging again, and he's kind of brought into this whole conflict based around this ancient artifact. And he does not want to be the hero that everyone's trying to make him out to be. He doesn't think he deserves to be. So it's kind of a journey of him, from how he is at the beginning to end up saving the realms and the people he comes to care about. He has to embrace what he fears most, which is himself and his own power. So it's kind of like this journey of him to accept who he is and what he's capable of, and can he do it without unleashing and doing these terrible things because of his addiction. And it's a lot more to it than that, but that's really what is at the crux of it. Is he is without him there really wouldn't be a story. So
I love that reluctant hero thing.
Yes,
that's one of my favorites. So
yeah, I've always loved the superheroes are wonderful, but I want to know what made them.
Right.
Where did they come from? What trials did they have to go through in order to be the hero they are now? So
now the addiction to magic, that's kind of a more unique take, because usually in epic fantasy, magic is like the pinnacle. That's where all the power comes from, and
everyone wants to achieve it. Right.
And so where did you get the inspiration for that, and why did you choose that for your magic system?
Well, like I said, I always loved flawed characters and flawed heroes, and like the backstory and all of what makes them who they are. And I wanted a character whose greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. So by making his magic, the most powerful weapon he carries, and it's also his greatest weakness because it's, he has the addiction, and when he gives into it, when one of his race casts magic, they draw the energy out from whatever happens to be around them. So whether it's plants, animals, the person standing next to you, and if your addiction is raging and you can't control it, you're going to accidentally kill the person next to you, possibly, or that tree over there. They can't control it. So there's this, raging need to cast magic, but then there's this guilt that comes with it every time they give in. So he needs to learn to use his magic to save people, but yet he could ultimately kill someone else. So it's just this guilt and this worry and this need to overcome that's makes it his greatest weakness as well. He also has a few other weaknesses like wine and women. They're kind of like his kryptonite. Yeah. So, but yeah, I really wanted him to be able to, like I said, to grow and to be this tortured hero that becomes something else. And I just felt like, he needed to have, it couldn't just be, oh, there's the magic and, oh, that saves everything. It needed to have this drawback that was real and could relate to even to, real world problems.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So you mentioned that he was sort of the spark that made you start writing this series. Where did your inspiration for he himself come from?
Well, I've always been a huge reader, and my family was always, huge readers, and everyone read something different. So I was reading westerns, and I was reading sci-fi, and I was reading, whatever was classics, whatever was on the shelf. And I had some, there were always, and I can't remember all the names now because I was very young when I was reading some of these, but there were always this feeling of these certain characters that stood out to me. And I really wanted to create a character that kind of embodied some of the things that I enjoyed when I was younger, and I first got into reading, and I was reading all these epic characters because to me that's what they were. I was young and they was impressionable, and so I kind of wanted him to be a cowboy and an outlaw. The monster and the hero. Kind of a little bit of everything all rolled into one. So that's kind of just where he was born from. Just I tried to pick a little bit from the detective and like I said, in the monster and the cowboy and all these little bits and pieces that I like from other characters to make him his own.
I definitely remember when I was reading the first book that he had this like sort of playful cowboy road side.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, he's got the swagger, but he doesn't know it. You know what I mean? He's cocky, but it's kind of like this is just who I am. It's not like, it's not, I mean, I suppose it could be obnoxious to some people, but he's not, it's just who he is.
Right. It's not the false bravado.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So sort of switching gears a little bit here.
Yes.
You grew up in Kansas and now you live in New York.
Yes.
So did you always want to be a writer, and what ultimately led you from, your childhood reading all these stories and deciding like, I'm going to make a career out of this, which is a terrifying leap sometimes.
Well, I was, obviously I went from reading to writing when I was very young. I was writing poetry. And, like when in elementary school, as soon as I could really write, I started writing. And I was writing short stories. I remember one in particular about a squirrel. That's all I can tell you. I don't remember anything else about it. I just know it was a squirrel. And I remember binding it in this, I took cardboard and covered it with, I don't remember, even corduroy or something on the front. And it was just some crazy thing I did. But I started writing, I guess you would call it fan fiction. Now, it wasn't, back then there wasn't a name for it, but I would take my favorite TV shows and I would write my own scripts because I didn't like the way that they were going on the TV show, so I would write my own. And then I started writing mysteries, and I never really finished any of them. I was really young. I would write fake newscasts and make my parents sit and watch me give the news, and I would write commercials. I mean, anything, just anything. And then finally, by the time I was 16, I decided it's time to try and actually write a book. So I sat down, and that's when my dad bought me a typewriter. And I know it's an ancient device that you would type on. It works. And I wrote this post-apocalyptic, gigantic 800-page novel called A Twist of Fate. And I was all into the post-apocalyptic back, and I still am, but that was my big thing right then. And it was wonderful. And I would go take notebooks to school when I was supposed to be doing other things, in high school, and I was writing instead, and I finished it. It was the first thing I ever finished. So I was pretty proud of that. And from that minute on, that was always my dream, was to be able to hold my book, to go and see my book on a shelf somewhere. And
it never gets old either.
No, and that's all I ever wanted. And, then, life gets in the way, and, job, family, kids, the whole bit, so I just, I was always writing, always reading. And I developed this very big love-hate relationship with bookstores because I loved them more than anything. But then I would go in there and I would be like, I would hate it because this is what I wanted. This is what I wanted to do. So eventually when the kids were old enough to be in school full time, and when I had kids, I stayed home with them. So then I had a little bit of time, but not really, because you've got babies and you've got toddlers and you've got two. So when they were in school full time, that's when I really decided this is it. This is what I'm doing the rest of my life. And my husband has been very, very supportive, which is
awesome.
Yeah. My family, my friends, everyone is just so supportive. I go to Comic-Cons and events, and my friends are always like, they're like lining up to go, and they're like, no, I want to go to this one. No, I want to go to that one. How come you didn't invite me to this one? And I joke around calling them my roadies, but they're just absolutely phenomenal, the support that I've had. So
That's
my
awesome.
sister, my brother, everyone has just been wonderful.
And that's rare. I feel like not a lot of authors necessarily have that
Yeah,
support.
I always assumed people would,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was a few months ago. I was on Facebook, and I was actually reading some people were talking about that, about how they just really have no support. And I actually admit I was shocked. And they were asking, on who has had, what has your experience been? And I feel like I'm very lucky, especially after reading all these threads. I used to feel like I wouldn't, like no one would understand, and
Right.
I was afraid to show anything to anyone. The whole thing that we all go through. But then once it happened, I think everyone was, surprised. Oh, hey, she can write.
I don't have to lie to her.
Yeah, exactly. I actually like this. So it's been wonderful. It really is.
Awesome.
It's like, it is my dream come true. It really is. Oh.
Now, have you done anything with Twist of Fate since you finish it?
Other than take it out of the closet every once in a while and look at it and like hide my eyes. I can't believe I wrote that. No, but I can say that I've taken some traits from some of the characters and that I had first developed then, and kind of morphed them into some other characters that I've used. More of just like a tribute kind of thing to them more than anything. I tell myself all the time I'm going to go back and rewrite it, and someday I might. And I have a couple more in a box in my closet along with them. And one of them actually morphed into a version of my new series.
Okay.
Little bit. Just like there was a little bit of inspiration there from it that I kind of put into my new series. So
awesome. Now, do you want to tell me a little bit more about that second series? And that's Nightfire, am I?
Nightfire,
okay,
yes. It's Dahlia Knight. She is a shape-shifting creature hunter from a parallel world ruled by dragons. So when she was on her world, she was very respected. She was an executioner for the Dragon Queen, and she screwed up, basically. And all it takes is one wrong move, and the Dragon Queen has no patience. So she was marked for execution, and being half human, she went to the one place that she thought she could hide, which was our world. So she came through, the little rips through the parallel worlds, and has been living among humans for almost 100 years now. And she basically has set up this life for herself where she travels around and deals with these creatures that are coming through from parallel worlds and threatening humanity, as kind of like a payback for them giving her a place to live, even though they don't know she's there. So the whole series is based on the fact that the creatures from our myths and legends actually exist, but on parallel worlds. So when there's rips in the worlds and the creatures come through, that's where all the sightings from our legends have come from.
Now, are those rips do those just occur naturally, or does something trigger them? Is it like
that's kind of at the heart of the underlying mystery that's going through the whole series. Each book is can be read alone, I suppose. Especially, the first one, I try to get them where they, you can read them standalone if you really want to, but you're going to get more if you go in order. That's normal. But so each one is like a monster of the week, crime of the week. She's partnering up with the police detectives and all this, and she's trying to solve whatever creature murder has happened. But then throughout it, there's this underlying mystery of what is really going on. The exits, the first exit opened on between her world and the human world eons ago. And it was opened by a dragon queen who is long since deceased, who had this ability, which I don't want to give too much away. The rips are formed through basically a breakdown in the fabric and the veil that separates the world, and it's caused by all the trauma and the pain that each world has felt. So if there's a spot of a great battle or a murder or something horrific has taken place, the trauma or the imprint of all that pain is left behind, and it eats away at the fabric between the worlds.
I love that. That's like sort of one of those theories about what ghosts really are that I've read.
Yes,
It's
yes.
like
Well,
this imprint
yes.
of trauma.
And Dahlia is empathic, and but she only reads negative emotions, and so she can see all the trauma that humans carry around, and she sees it as this dark shadow that like bursts out of them and like weighs on their shoulders, and it's so she basically says what really haunts humanity is our own pain and not ghosts. She calls them ghosts because she'll see them like trailing off and just like this weight of the world on your shoulders because it's all the pain you've carried, and she sees that, and she can, it actually helps her a little bit with solving the crimes because she can see like if she's touching a body that's recently deceased, and she can get an imprint of their last moments of death, so right
like
before
that.
they died. So thank you.
Now, what was the biggest challenge? Because epic fantasy to urban fantasy, that's kind of a bigger leap because you're going from this world you've created to a world that actually exists, sadly.
Yes.
Now, what was the biggest challenge for you?
It was really scary to me, and that's one reason I did it, because I wanted to prove, after living in Ian's head and in that world for so long, I wanted to prove to myself that I could still do something else. And the hard part too, I mean, I went from writing first person male point of view, first person female point of view, and being able to, you're right, just going from creating everything and having this whole this world and these races and these religions, everything that I've got going on here, to suddenly I have real world things I have to describe. Right. I've got all this stuff with the police department. I've got I've actually have weapons and guns now. I'm like, I have to figure out how to and I started out, I wanted it set in New York, and it just became too much because then I'm thinking, okay, I don't know the streets well enough. I don't know the neighborhoods well enough. I was spending so much time doing research because there are people who will be like, that's not right. That's not right. That wouldn't be here. And I'm like, I was killing myself. I can't do this. So that's when I decided to fictional city that had a New York feel. It had like a gritty kind of a, New York, Gotham, kind of, and that took a big weight off of me. But still, there's been a lot more research than I expected there to be. I'm thinking, oh, it's I know what the world is like. Why do I need to? No, not at all. It was a lot of forensics. I've had to do. I did a lot of research on forensics, and yeah, it was definitely a challenge. But I'm having such a blast with it now, as I always wanted to do something with urban legends. And it centers around a lot of urban legends because that's, where the creatures and things have come from that, are on these other worlds. So I take some of the legends that we know and twist them around, like, excuse me, like the gargoyles that come alive on the church, and they talk about those, or they talk about some of the other things that we think we know as one thing, and we're actually something else. But the legends were twisted so we wouldn't know what was really going on. Well, it's been a lot of fun. Yeah. It went from being really scary to being a lot of fun.
Well, that's good. That's the way you want it to go, right?
Yes. Yes.
not the other way around.
Right.
So do you have a favorite character or a favorite scene in your series? I mean, no one has specific favorites because there are babies, but
right. Well, of course, Ian and Dahlia I love because I would have to say one of my favorites is from the Crown of Stones, Malik Rourke. I love Malik. He's so, I don't even know how to describe. He's very enigmatic. He's very mysterious. You never quite know for quite a while whether he's good or bad. He just is. He's suave, and he's very charismatic. He has some great lines, and I love the relationship that he has with Ian. So that I would have to say he's definitely one of my favorite characters. There's a few others that I've really enjoyed writing, but he's up there. Yeah. As far as favorite scenes, there's one in the second book, Magic Scars, right here, where Ian goes from being he's captive. He's at someone else's mercy, and he is totally at their mercy. And by the end of the chapter, he has become this force to be reckoned with and is literally like bringing down the walls kind of thing. And I absolutely love that chapter. I feel like that really embodies who he is. And it's almost like a mini version of his whole journey. So
I love that when it's like the microcosm of the entire book.
Yes.
And
Yes.
encapsulated. That's always
and that's kind of how I feel. That's kind of yeah. So I love that one.
I feel like we learned that in English class or something. See, school is.
I probably slept
is
through
useful.
English class. In fact, I'm sure I did.
You wrote through English class.
Yes, for that too.
Yeah, I have all my notebooks. I did the same thing. So I was like scribbling things.
Yes.
So your work is, are you Kindle only at this point?
No, paperback as well. I have been from the beginning. That was, in fact, that was more important to me. I actually normally publish all my paperbacks first because I need to feel that paperback in my hands. I've always been a paperback person. And the first book of Crown of Stones is on Audible, and the second one I'm hoping will be out in January. And the first Nightfire book should be out on Audible before the end of the year.
Awesome.
So
I'm
excited about that.
I love that audio is becoming a much bigger thing.
Yes, it is. I would not have expected that. I did it basically because people started asking me at conventions and in-person events, and I realized that, okay, I need to have this other medium for people who are interested in that. And then I published it, and it really started taking off. And I'm like, oh, wow, I had no idea that it would. And now everything I'm reading is like how popular it's become. So that's good.
That's awesome. So your work is available on clschneider.com. But where else can people stalk you?
I
don't actually stalk her.
Yes.
Disclaimer: don't stalk anyone.
You can. I'm definitely on Twitter the most, really. And CL_Schneider. I have the Facebook page, CL Schneider Fantasy Author. I just started Instagram not that long ago. I'm getting there with that one. I'm on Goodreads. I have the Amazon author page. Locally, I'm at a lot of local events. Anyone who's in, the New York, Connecticut, New Jersey area, if you subscribe to my newsletter or keep an eye on my website, I'm always listing all the events in the area that I will be attending. I love to go to local Comic-Cons, and I have a small one coming up at our local mall in a couple weeks. And then one more at the end of November. And then I don't think I have anything else planned the rest of this year. But
yeah, I feel like the con stuff is really gearing up for fall. I mean, I guess that's
yeah. It's not that. I mean, there's a few in December and January, but I think it kind of is a little bit of a lull. At least for me, it is. I mean, with the holidays, the kids and stuff, there's it's really hard for me to do something around that time. But yeah, you can usually find me somewhere, somewhere locally or online. I'm always around.
Well, that's good. And so for our listeners, definitely check out Crown of Stones and Nightfire by C.L. Schneider. And I'll put links to all of those in the show notes. So thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. And, thank you. It was fun.
Yeah, it was great to chat with you. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.